We're going live.
He's not going to answer you.
We're live now.
That's like
Good
when he
evening.
mutes you. Good evening.
This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. I'm here with some very special guests this evening, Miss G, Georgette Truan, and D. D, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. What city and state are you from?
I am in Orange County, California.
Oh, okay, so you're local.
Yes.
So what is your association with CPS?
Well, I had a case that opened up in August of 2020, but just as of July 21st, I had my rights terminated, and so my public defender went ahead and submitted an appeal, and just as of, I believe, a week ago, I got court appointed an assigned appellate attorney out of San Diego, and I was just trying to see about getting some more information on like maybe what to expect or the process, or maybe some advice on anything I should be doing or that sort of thing.
You said you thought you were going to get that information?
What do you mean, did I think?
Maybe
No, I think I was just curious to see if I could get some information from you as to maybe what to expect from this point forward, as far as I know that he has to read my record, in its entirety, or bound to the record, and see if there's anything that he believes is, wrongdoing of the judge to, do the brief of appeal. But I think there's a lot of points that the judge did in wrongdoing, and so I was just curious as to what I should expect to happen or how it goes, if that makes sense.
Well, the way the appeal is processed is the first thing after you file the notice of appeal, the clerk of the court, of the Superior Court, has to gather the clerk's transcripts and the reporter's transcripts, and that's called the record on appeal. Now, the interesting thing for 2-6 hearings is that the record is pretty sparse because it only includes a couple of hearings. Sometimes you get more action on a 2-6 appeal when you bring in other issues that have happened in the case but not previously brought up. Sometimes it's too late to bring up those issues, sometimes not. But once the attorney that's appointed to you reviews the record, he or she will prepare an opening brief. There's a deadline for it.
Yeah, and it's approaching soon, so I was just...
They'll file the brief. The second thing that will happen is that the county's attorney will file a brief about 30 days after that. And then your attorney has the chance to file what's called a reply brief, probably about 2 weeks after that. After a couple months, the Court of Appeals will notify your attorneys, asking them whether they want oral argument in front of the Court of Appeals. If oral argument is had, they'll set a date. If it's not, they'll just make a decision, within 60 to 90 days. And, if you go to oral argument and, the court will make a decision 60 to 90 days later. Now, here's the thing. Oral argument, you can't, and in the appeal, you cannot bring up evidence that you didn't first bring up in the trial court. So if you have evidence that you need to bring up, you better make sure that in your 2-6 hearing that it's brought up. Otherwise, your appeal is going to be very limited. And the reason why this is very limited is because all throughout the court process, you have the right to appeal or file what they call an extraordinary writ almost at every hearing. A lot of people, they come to me and I ask them, well, what happened on the prior appeals? Oh, I never appealed. Well, why didn't you appeal? Nobody ever mentioned it to me. So, that's one of those things. After you have a hearing, you better be talking to your attorney about whether you should appeal or not. I like to just tell people, hey, you know, you should really look hard at whether you should appeal or not. I did a trial today, and the judge ruled against my client. And, the first thing I told my client when we walked outside is, we're going to file the appeal, right? She said, absolutely. So, never take these things lying down. I mean, these are your kids you're talking about.
Well,
Why
I think
wouldn't you
that
appeal?
the biggest issue that my public defender tried to stress in, I think it's the 2-6 hearing, was the fact that the paternal grandmother, since day one when the kids were taken 2 years ago, has always let it be known to the courts that she wanted to be considered for placement. And, make a long story short, they pushed aside and pushed aside her. And come to find out, when they really dug deep into it, they found out a lot of stuff as far as, January of this year, she was actually approved from the RFA for placement. But the thing that we got on record from my attorney was that somewhere along the line in the minute report, I mean, it was most likely the social worker, but when she was asked on the stand, she said she didn't recall, but it was either her or somebody from her office put in the report that my child was already in a permanent placement, meaning in my eyes and my public defender's eyes, it was almost as if, why are they going to keep thinking that they need to look for placement if he's already in a permanent placement? And so, make a long story short, she was approved as of January of this year, and still up to the 2-6 hearing when we were talking about it, and why is basically my child not being taken out of this foster care setting and placed with her immediately if she's approved. They just kept giving the runaround and the runaround, and all they would say is because basically my child, my youngest is the one that's mostly affected, because my two older are with my mom and she's doing legal guardianship. But my youngest, he was born 2 months after my two olders were taken. So they immediately took him when he was born in October of 2020. He's been with the same foster couple since day one, and they literally, since day one, have wanted to adopt my child. I mean, they even went out and got private counsel and everything to try and, do everything that they could to take him. But the biggest defense that they kept saying in court was, this is all my child has known as far as since he's been born. But what they're not looking at is, if they would have placed him correctly with the paternal grandmother from day one, then these foster parents would have never even been in the picture. But, my whole case was kind of, I felt like, just, of course, like everybody's case, really done kind of, quote unquote, excuse my language, but ass backwards. I mean, it's just from day one, my social worker, I felt like already had it made up that she wanted my kid to be adopted by these, foster parents. And there was nothing that we could do to basically prove otherwise. We even did a bonding study. I mean, we've done it all, and nothing ever seemed to change the social worker or the judge's mind, as far as, even the counsel for my child said at the TPR hearing that, the parents have made great progress, and, and I see them, going forward and making great progress, but you know what? We're just out of time. And she literally said on the record, if we could have like another year, I could definitely see child being returned to parents. And I was just astonished to think that she would say that on the record, saying that she could see the child being returned to parents, but yet she's ran out of time. So now this child is going to be placed into these, people that, he doesn't even basically have any kind of blood ties to, just because we're out of time. I mean, there's just so many things to it, but I really feel like that might be our only strength at maybe an appeal. I don't know what you have to say on that, but I just feel like the whole placement issue. I mean, you always talk so highly about relative placement and even friends or anybody, should the children should go to number one versus going to, a foster setting, but they just never wanted it to go that route for some reason. I don't know.
D, how honest do you want me to be with you?
The most honest you can be, because I'd rather hear it from you than hear it from somebody else and be disappointed with my hopes up.
Okay, well, let me start and tell you. And, this will be a good lesson for people that are watching this. Because a lot of things that I say, people don't believe. Like, oh, that'll never happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll start with your 2-6 hearing. It doesn't sound like a bonding study was done. Was there?
I'm not 100% sure on that for some reason.
Okay.
They said that they wanted to, but I don't know if they went forward with it.
Okay, so you would know if they did a bonding study because you would have been part of the study.
Okay, then they didn't.
Right. So you didn't get the bonding study. Number 2, you're focusing on the wrong thing for a 2-6 appeal. The 2-6 appeal addresses whether the child has a relationship with you such that it would be detrimental to terminate the child's parental or your parental rights.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff about they didn't place with the grandmother and blah, blah, blah. Wrong hearing.
Okay.
You had 6 other hearings to bring that up. Bringing it up at the 2-6, generally, it's like, so what? You had 6 other hearings to deal with that.
But when we did address it on the other ones, and it was never, I feel like, looked into for some reason.
Because you and or your attorney didn't present it the right way. Now, let me ask you something. How many petitions or 388 did Grandma file with the court?
None. She didn't know how or didn't know.
Right.
To be honest with you, Mr. Davis, the only reason my public defender ended up doing anything at the end is because of me learning from you and almost forcing him to do.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't think he would have done anything.
I don't know if you're right or wrong, but listen, I'm trying to help you, give you information, give these people that are watching us information on a Monday night instead of watching the Rams and San Francisco 49ers play on Monday Night Football. I'm a big Ram fan.
Yay!
So look, you have to start early and start often. If Grandma wants the kids, let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
If Grandma was going to get $100 million in cash, if she got the children placed with her, what do you think Grandma would have done during the case? I'm going to tell you what she would have done. She would have went out and hired Johnny Cochran if he were still alive. But when it's just the kids, for whatever reason, the social workers beat us down, deflect, and make us just sit back and be victims.
Well, she was bounced around a lot because she's out of county. And so she was dealing with...
Doesn't matter. If somebody told you they're bullshitting you, it doesn't matter where you live. Mm-hmm. I tell people that all the time.
Well, they literally told her that in the beginning, that she wasn't going to get approved for placement because she wasn't in the same county.
If it was $100 million, do you think she would have said, okay, keep the money, No. She went and got Johnny Cochran to come in and kick some CPS butt. But people don't do that with children. I don't know why. Children are probably worth more than the money. You know, I talk to a lot of people, as you might imagine, from all over the country. And sometimes I just talk to people and they're like, they've given up. They want to talk to me, they want me to hear the story. They want me to be outraged with them. But it's like, okay, now that you've told me the story and we've both been outraged by this unacceptable CPS conduct, what are you going to do? I don't know. Okay, no problem. Good talking to you. Call me when you figure it out. Do you want to go? I told somebody today, hey, go to your hometown, downtown, find the bar association and find an attorney that you can hire to get this kid back. I don't know if I can do that, Mr. Davis. Won't they charge me money? Yeah, they probably will. How bad do you want the kid back? So let's not fool ourselves. CPS is going to take advantage of you and your children as long as you don't do anything. Right before the show, I was a little late logging on because I was talking to a grandma in Fresno. And she's ready to kick ass and take names. She basically told me if it's the last thing that she does in her life, she's going to fight to get her grandkids back. As a grandchild, as one child. Now, there's a lady that's going to do something. Will she win? I don't know. I don't know. But you shouldn't probably be thinking about that. Now, if grandma in your case wants the kids, she better go to court and file something. Get a lawyer, file a 388, a de facto motion, presumed parent motion, motion for relative placement, file something, get before the judge. In a lot of my videos, I tell people this, and I want you guys to listen to this very carefully because it's as simple as it sounds. If the social worker tells you something that you don't like, you immediately go to court and talk to the judge. You file the motion, you file the petition. Social workers don't make decisions in cases. Did you know that? They don't make decisions. They make recommendations. And the judge makes the final decision. Sometimes social workers make recommendations, and grandma goes to court and fights for the kid, and the judge rules in grandma's favor. I've seen it happen many times. I've also seen grandmas say, I'm tired, I don't want to pursue it. Okay, no problem. But the child's not going to be placed back with you because the social worker is going to get her way. Social workers do not make decisions. They make recommendations. Now, when they talk to you like they're the final decision maker. The judge don't have shit to do with it. That's how they talk. Mm-hmm. Social worker makes all the decisions. That's not true. Now, the social worker may talk to you like that because they're bluffing you, because they're gaining the power position over you, and you just accept it. Okay. Nothing I can do about that one. There's always something you can do. Look, Monday night, was it this Monday night? No, today's Monday night. I guess it was last Monday night. We had a woman on the show who had a case in San Diego County. Her rights were terminated 5 years ago.
5 years,
She lost like 2 or 3 children.
Yeah, I followed that.
5 years later, because she kept fighting,
Yeah,
not only were her rights reinstated, but she got her children back.
yeah,
Now, granted, there were some very unique circumstances going on,
yeah,
okay? But it happens. But so many times people, and look, and I've been there too. Look, I'm not immune to this. We're so disappointed and distraught. We lay down and we give up. We've all been there. And I see it happening a lot in these cases because there's nothing more important to you than your children. And when you've lost that, somebody told me recently, why should I even continue living? I get it. I get it. So what are you going to do? Now, should have had the bonding study, should have filed a 2 or 3 388s before the 2/6 termination hearing, should have filed an appeal at the termination of your family reunification services, should have filed an appeal after your 6-month review hearing date, should have filed an appeal after your disposition hearing, right? Look how many appeals that is. Grandma should have gone out, filed the right motions and petitions. You know what a lot of people do, and they get played by the social worker. The social worker acts so nice to them, like, "Oh yeah, we're going to give you the kids. Just relax. Just hold on. We're going to give you the kids."
that
And
was
of course,
exactly my scenario in the beginning.
right.
And
And
then
of
she
course,
just dropped off of the face of the earth. She doesn't even work for the county. And right before our unification services were about to be terminated, we get a brand new social worker a month before. And, then she gets to make the decision. And I feel like she just went off of whatever the previous social worker, had already written up in her recommendation. Because how could she know our whole case in less than a
right.
month and just went with it, But
I a few years ago, I was invited to speak to a class of graduating seniors and first and second year graduate students at Cal State University, Long Beach. Apparently,
no, that's where I went.
Long Beach has a very good program for social workers. And it was very interesting because people who are, they're young people who had been molded by the education system to believe generally that sometimes it's just better to adopt kids out than leave them with the family.
Hmm.
So this indoctrination starts happening very before they even get on the job. All right.
So sad.
And I sat there and I listened to the discussions and I was on the panel and blah, blah, blah. And they fully have bought into the let's terminate, give the kid to the foster parent where they'll have a better life and let's move on.
It's like, what's the whole point of reunification? Bringing the family back together.
That's a word that has been, I don't know, that we just say. You know how like you say you love somebody? I love you.
Yeah.
We don't mean that, right? We don't mean that. It's like reunification. Let's keep the family together. If it was reunification to keep the family together, why aren't the financial incentives on keeping the family together?
Exactly.
The financial incentives for the foster
Just to
parent and the
break them
social
apart.
worker
Yeah.
is to keep the child away from the family. We've known that since Arnold Schwarzenegger was first governor of California. He commissioned what's it called? I forget the commission the Hoover Commission, to write a report about, this CPS, the way they're doing business. Because around this time, CPS had crossed over. You see, before, when I first started doing this, it was black and brown people. And like a pop star, CPS crossed over to white folks. And they got angry and they demanded Schwarzenegger do something. And he ordered a report. And the report came back and said, the financial incentives are placed on the wrong thing. It's placed upon keeping the kid away from the home and pushing the kid back in the home. But what they didn't realize is there was a systemic problem in the way CPS did business. And it was deep, and it was deeply rooted in its employees and its supervisors and its county deputies. You think people that have been working there 20 years were going to change? No. You'd have to fire everyone and start all over again.
Mhm.
But that wasn't going to happen either. I see, are there some, parents that need help? Yeah, there are. Let's be honest. Is there ever any child abuse? Yeah, of course. But when I see children being taken away because mom and dad had an argument one night after they came home from a party where they had both been drinking, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, in a perfect world, should that happen? No, of course not. But does it happen with families? Yes, it does. The nature of people we're going to argue and fight and disagree. But should we lose our kids because of that?
I think that was my biggest thing throughout the whole thing is, they just kept basically wanting me to separate from father because it started with, domestic violence. But we always were in the name of reunification and working our case plan and, bettering ourselves as a individual, but also as a couple. And, we thought that we were fighting through and making ourselves stronger for, our kids coming back home so that it, would never happen again. But I mean, it got so bad to where they were literally telling my kids almost on a daily basis that, you're not going back home because mom won't leave dad and mom's choosing dad over you guys. And it just was heartbreaking.
What the funny thing is? I can't tell you how many hundreds of times I've heard that in the last 30 some years. But when I open the book, the laws, it says family reunification.
Exactly.
It doesn't say mother reunification.
Exactly.
It says family. And it's like, I thought the goal was to put the family unit back together. Now, does dad have problems? Yeah, I'm sure. Dad may have had problems since he was a kid, the way he was brought up, got involved with heavy drinking, has an anger management issue. Yeah, okay. Now, what are we going to do to help this family? We're going to send dad to rehab. We're going to send dad to counseling, if he'll go, right? If we have to try. And if he doesn't, mom, you're going to have to step up and take the kids by themselves. But I
mean, it got so bad. I went through, I think, 3 therapists, and my second one was to the point where she was telling me that the counselor that my kids had in the beginning, the contract was about to end, and that my social worker was asking if she would be interested in possibly being the kids' new counselor. And so she was letting me know that that might be a possibility. And even out of her mouth, she told me, now, wouldn't you hate to have me now counsel your kids and have to tell your kids why they're not coming home because mom won't leave dad and mom is choosing dad over the kids? And I looked at her like, and you're a therapist. Like, I mean, that was the final straw on the back of that one where, I put my foot down and said, I request a new therapist because if anything, this was the exact opposite of what I thought therapy was. I mean, I would go in there, dreading it for the week prior and leave in tears. And she would not do anything Zoom or virtual. It had to be in person, in her office, face to face. And I mean, it was just, she was old school. She was a licensed family, marriage or whatever you call it. But I mean, some of the things that she told me, and then the way that I would discuss things with her in therapy and how she would repeat it and have it be put, in words with my social worker. And I'm thinking, isn't that breaking, confidentiality? I never signed over anything to give her permission to, repeat what we talked about. And I mean, it got really bad with, that therapist, but I mean, there's just so much to my whole case that I just feel like I learned everything too late, straight off from the beginning. If I would have known the allegations and the investigative part of it all, I mean, I was just so naive to it all. And I didn't know anything about CPS. And, I wish that I would have never had to know about it, but it's just sad to know that I feel like in a criminal world, like you always say, you have more rights, as you in a criminal type of case than you do in this. But it's like, where do the parents get, the information that I feel like is needed beforehand? I feel like they always figure it all out when it's too late and too far down the road. And then what? Like you're saying, how come you didn't appeal here? How come you didn't appeal here? I mean, I didn't even know about the 2.6 and the 388 up until when I was looking like I was about to approach, a TPR. And it's like,
I'm going to answer that question. The reason why it's not taken seriously at the beginning is because deep down in your heart, you believe that this isn't really happening or could happen to you in this country. This is the United States of America. We don't do shit like that.
I just never knew CPS was what it is.
Right.
If you would have told me beforehand, if I never had a case about someone down the street involved in CPS, I would have thought, like most everybody else, oh, well, they must have done something wrong.
Right.
Social workers help people. They get kids out of abuse and do everything the exact opposite of what they're really doing. And it's sad because my mom is, I feel like, the pure example of it, meaning to this day, I mean, she has my two older kids, but I mean, to this day, she still tells me, well, you don't have your kids back home, so there must be something that you're still not doing right, and it's just, I mean, her and my social worker towards the end, I mean, it got pretty bad as far as conflict of interest and stuff. I mean, my social worker's daughter was babysitting my two older kids on the weekend because my mom would cry to her and say, I don't know what to do with them on the weekend when I'm at work and this and that. And then here comes my social worker with her daughter that, wanted to earn an extra dollar or two, I'm sure, and started babysitting my kids. And I mean, there's just so much to my case that I feel like my public defender, pretender, like we all call him, I mean, he was just along for the ride. Mm-hmm. It only took one firecracker public defender that for my husband, that came in, he had 3 total, but came in the middle, female. All of a sudden, she was speaking all the lingo that you were speaking, and she was going to do this. She was going to do the bonding study. She had an investigator come out to our house, take pictures. I mean, she was moving mountains and telling me all the things what my public defender, I feel like, should have been doing all along and filing and stuff. I mean, I was telling my public defender, okay, so these are my 3 options come the next hearing, right? Either we request for kids to come home, which is not going to happen. We request for more reunification services, which is probably not going to happen. Or, we request for, I don't know what the last option was, but, it's like, why am I telling my public defender what he should be telling me? And then she ended up having to go out on medical, and so we lost her. And then my husband got a 3rd one that was just as Joe Blow as the other one. But, I mean, it's just sad to think,
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
You may be too young for this, but did you ever watch the O.J. Simpson trial
Yes.
when it was alleged that he killed Nicole?
I mean, I didn't watch it, but I know enough about it, I feel like.
Hmm.
I'll be 40
So
next year. I don't know when exactly it happened.
okay, so I was a young lawyer then,
Uh-huh.
and one of the things I realized about our system of justice is that if you want to win a legal battle, you better have a really good attorney. Now, can you ever win a legal battle without Johnny Cochran? Yes, you can. But it's all about odds, right? You want to play the odds. So let me review this. O.J. Simpson hired Johnny Cochran. At the time, probably the number one or number two trial criminal defense attorney in the country. In the country. He hired Barry Scheck,
I was going to
the
say all the other ones to follow behind him.
the Barry Scheck at that time was the genius in DNA evidence. He was the guru. Okay. Then he also hired F. Lee Bailey, legendary attorney. Legendary. Now, I can tell you that with those attorneys on your side, compared to the DAs at that time on the case, they were outmatched. The DAs were outmatched. There's a story about, and I actually saw this. I actually went to the courthouse and watched part of the proceedings. Do you remember there was a guy on, I forget the name of the show. It was a sitcom where a older white guy with a white daughter was raising two black kids, and one of the kids was Todd Bridges. Do you remember that sitcom? Okay.
Mm-mm.
Well, Todd Bridges grew up, and I just saw an article about him recently, and he's doing very well these days. He's like my age. But when he got out of, when he was a young man, he had some significant issues, some of them drug related. It's all in the news. And it was alleged that Todd Bridges shot a drug dealer point blank range and like in the stomach or something. Didn't kill him. And Todd Bridges hired Johnny Cochran.
Mhm.
They went through the
Wow.
trial. They went to trial. Now, Todd Bridges had shot the guy. He did shoot him. The verdict comes back not guilty. Not guilty.
Not guilty of what? Shooting him? Or, I mean, because he's
Yeah.
alive,
Not
right? Or did he
not guilty
die?
of anything. Not guilty of anything.
Oh, wow.
Now, it was right then in my career as a young lawyer that I realized something. You can be a very effective lawyer and persuade judges and juries. You can. So, here's the other thing, and it's a very harsh rule, but I think about it often. This is America, and a lot of people say you get what you pay for.
That's true, though.
Okay. If it's true, why are you telling me about what a bad job your public defender did?
Because I
Here
learned it
you
all too late in the game.
right. But that's just it. Here you have maybe one of the most important cases in your lifetime. You get what you pay for. You went with the free court appointed attorney, and now you're telling me after you've lost your parental rights what they didn't do for you. And the only reason why you let this happen is because deep in your heart, in the beginning of the case, you never thought this could possibly happen. Oh yeah, they mentioned it, but this is America. They don't steal kids from parents. So it's like I can just deal with the public defender.
And I think the biggest piece to my puzzle too is, the foster parents that, have my youngest, they unfortunately can't have children of their own. And this is their first rodeo with, having any kind of placement, foster kid, whatever. And, it just so happened to be that, they got my son, fresh out the hospital and, have just obviously grown attached to him and, they want him. And so the longest,
Right.
like halfway
Listen.
through, I felt like I was fighting CPS as well as them,
Listen.
and never did they play that in the beginning. They played the whole, we want to be here for you. We want to do
Right,
anything we can, song and dance.
Look, many years ago, I used to represent foster parents. Okay. So you don't have to tell me about the song and dance. But let me tell you something. If you had a baby today and they took the baby away from you and gave the baby to me, okay? Let's say my wife was still alive and we were raising this child. Do you know, as just normal human beings, we are going to become attached to that baby? We are going to love that baby. And, the love, psychological support, the feeding, the taking care of the baby when he's crying or she's crying. Listen, we're going to be attached to that baby. And, 12 months down the road, it's like, forget D. We want to keep this baby. We are the best thing for this baby. Social workers see this happening. And they see the baby reacting to me and my wife. So when it comes for them to make recommendations, do you think that they have your best interests in mind? No. And they're not necessarily
No, but
supposed
they
to.
should have the child's best interest.
But that's what everybody thinks. Oh, the social worker should have my best interest as the mother or father.
No, the
That is
child is
such
what I'm saying.
that's such a narrow way to look at it. Social workers have the child and when they come to my house and we're holding that baby and we're feeding that baby and changing that baby is reacting to us, smiling and giggling. Who's the social worker going to support? Even if it's just subconsciously, they're going to support me, not you.
No, I know,
Because you
but
know
that's
what?
where I think that fine line is of almost like kind of like disgusted in as far as when that child now grows up knowing that it was forced to be brought up in a non-biological atmosphere just
Right.
because of
I
the, you know
I
what I mean?
argued that. I argued that today. But you know what? We don't, as a society, really care about 20 years from now. We care
And
about
even
right now.
his siblings are so like traumatized over this now, having not seen him for the last 3 months and not knowing when and if they'll ever get to see him again. But no
Right?
one seems to care about that neither,
No, no.
I mean, it's just so
So what are
disgusting from
your
all avenues.
alternatives? Here are your alternatives, and this is the message that I want to tell everyone tonight. These people are serious. They will take your children away from you permanently. You better do everything that you can do at the beginning,
Yeah.
at the beginning of this case to set yourself up to get this child back, to set yourself up to get this child with friends or relatives. Friends or relatives. You're going to be so sorry. I'm telling you, you're going to be so sorry. I told this story once before. I did a case in Orange County years ago, and I was hired to represent the mother, and the grandmother, the mother of the mother, was there at the initial meeting. And I said, "Oh, where's the child? Child, oh, she's with my sister, the aunt of the mother. So I guess it's a great aunt." And I said to them at that first meeting, "Are you sure that's a really good idea? Because this is a cute, white, blonde haired, blue eyed baby. Are you sure? Oh, Mr. Davis, don't worry. That's family. That's blood.
Hmm.
They wouldn't stab us in the back.
Huh.
My client got all her kids back except that baby,
Oh my gosh.
which is, always blows my mind. How can she get all her kids back except for one?
Yeah, if you're good enough to have some, why can't you be good enough to have one?
And then I took that on appeal knowing that I would win, and I lost.
Why? I mean, what was their reasoning behind it?
I want to remain respectful of the Court of Appeals. I forgot what their reasoning was. Let's leave it at that.
You don't
But
recall.
I don't recall. I don't remember.
Oh.
I was cross-examining a social worker today, and when it got to the real hard part, she was great on her memory. And then when it got
All
hard
of a
part,
sudden.
oh, I don't recall.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that. I don't recall. Then I'd ask her another question, that favored her, and her memory was like, she was looking at a videotape of what happened.
Oh yeah. That was a social worker on stand. Whenever they asked her about anything to do with my child and, the foster parents, it was like her face would light up and she'd go into
Right.
such great detail. But then when she was asked questions about, for instance, the interaction between my child and us, it was all like very just one worded and very it was just so obvious just in that part of it in itself, and little did she realize she's admitting to all these times that she was supposedly going and doing all these visits, with my child and these foster parents. But why wasn't she coming to all my visits with my kids and seeing the interactions that we have and the bonding that we have? But, it's just everything in my case is just, I feel like I'm too late, and I'm learning everything too late in the game. And like you said, I just never in a million years thought that I haven't slept since. I still wake up in the morning thinking that it's not true. And I'm just, even more scared now talking to you and thinking that I had some kind of, I don't know, wishful hope in this maybe appeals type of thing. But now it's just making me feel more like it's just going to be another kind of closed book. And then I really don't know what I can do at that point. I don't know what happens if
the appeal. There's an appeal to the Supreme Court, right, of California. So talk to your appellate attorney about that.
Mm-hmm.
But never give up. I'm hoping that the woman we had on the show a week ago agrees to be a guest host for me on some of our shows, because this lady never gave up. Took her 5 years.
Are you talking about the one that? Yeah, I've heard her story from day one with LJ, and I was blown away too. But I mean, man, did she do her homework? But I also feel like she taught herself a lot of the situation before she actually had to. I don't know how to explain it, but no, I mean, yeah, she did all of what anyone should do. But again, it's like, how do I fix my situation when I feel like all the doors have already shut in a way where she kind of had a certain circumstance to her type of.
But it was education. I talked to her subsequently. She called me and wanted my input on something, and I thought I was talking to one of my lawyers who works for me. That's how well educated she has become, and I guess she's just been studying this for like 5 or 6 years. So,
well, just a short amount of time that I've found you, I think the last 6 months. I feel like if it wasn't for you, I don't even think I would know half of the stuff I know. But
imagine if you did this
5 years on top of that.
Yeah.
No,
Before we
that's
go, Georgette, did you have any
Uh-huh.
comments this evening? Georgette's on mute, not saying much tonight.
Oh, I'm just enjoying listening to you, Mr. Davis, as always.
Okay. Dee, did you have any final questions for us this evening?
Well, I do know that the appellate brief is has a due date of October 17th, which is approaching quite soon. So if I don't hear anything by that date, am I to assume that the appellate attorney didn't see anything that he might feel would be appealable?
You'll know that before then. These appellate attorneys that are court appointed, they're very good at what they do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I might shoot that person an email or something and try to find out, what's going on.
Okay.
And if he or she says, oh, you don't have any issues to appeal, you always have issues to appeal. Now, whether they think it'll be worthwhile is another thing. But, give us a call. See if we
Okay.
can assist you. Because sometimes you get a letter from the Court of Appeal saying your court-appointed attorney says there's no issues for appeal. If you want to turn in a brief, you have 2 weeks or something like that,
Oh, okay.
So we can just deal with that if that comes up. Dee, I want to
Okay,
thank.
now,
Go
real
ahead.
quick, last question, if you don't mind. If like the appeals kind of gets thrown out the picture, the post-adoption agreement contract that I had signed with the foster parents, would that be something that comes into effect then immediately as far as what they agreed upon as far as visitation, or when do I
Well,
get to?
I'm going to give you some really bad news.
Uh,
And I was just talking to this right before this we went on live. I was just talking to this with another family from up north in California. You know those post-adoption agreements?
yeah.
They're misleading
Oh, great.
because although they're agreements, there's no way for you to enforce them by law. So if the foster parent changes their mind tomorrow, you're SOL.
So what's the point of signing an agreement? It's not really an agreement then.
Right. Well, it's an agreement. It is an agreement under the law. It just can't be enforced. Slight distinction from contracts, contracts class and first year law
Wow.
school. Okay. It's an agreement.
Wow.
You just don't have any remedies. And
Wow.
why do they do that? Probably to placate you, make it more acceptable to you that you've just lost your children. Oh, I'll
Wow.
still get to see them. I don't know if you've
Well,
read
it's only
any.
going to be once a year. Could you believe that? But,
Right. I don't know if you have read any books on how you control societies or populations of people, and that's one of those laws where they just want to bring you down just a little bit so you don't pick up a gun and go overthrow the government.
that's
So
really sick.
it's
That
like
really is.
one of those laws, right? Just to placate
Wow.
you.
Wow.
Dee, I want to thank
Okay.
you
Well,
for
thank you,
being
Mr.
on.
Davis.
Thank you for
Thank you.
being on today. I appreciate it. If you want to join us again, or I'm going to have Grace talk to you about something. I just wrote her a note. So expect Grace, the producer's call. Georgette, we're going to be on tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
Go Rams, right?
So
Are they
Georgette, I'll
winning?
see you. I don't know. I haven't watched the game.
Oh,
They were losing
well,
when I
how
came
about,
in. Yeah. Um,
well, hopefully they
and
win.
Grace, talk to LJ. See if she can join us. I don't know if
LJ is busy right now, Vincent. She lives in Florida. So let her,
not
let her.
LJ. I'm sorry, Cassandra.
Cassandra is not going to do it.
Oh, she's not a fan anymore.
No, that's not why.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll
Shut
get
up.
my encryptor out and see if I can figure out what that means. All right, folks. Good night. Have a nice evening. We'll see you tomorrow at 7.
Bye. Good
Bye-bye.
night. All right. Bye.